Hey everybody, this is Kristen, aka Vampy, here with Codex for another Boom Thursday review. And today I'm going to be reviewing a very limited run, 6 issues of comic called Dark Blood. Still very new, the 6th issue just came out in January of 2022. This comic series is written by Latoya Morgan and has two main illustrators. It has Walt Barna and Moises Hidalgo, who you'll see kind of if you're reading these, their names sort of interchange. They kind of each take one half of the other issue. It's kind of cool to see their two illustrative styles kind of collide in these comics. So, first off, I want to go ahead and just make a note that there are a few things that I will not be able to really discuss in this series because I have no background in it. There is a lot of racial tension and racial issues in these series. The main character is Avery Armitage, who is African American. It does take place during World War II as well as in 1950s in the South. Obviously, I don't have any background in that. I have never been the victim of racism or abuse like that. So I won't be able to come to this comic using that knowledge or those feelings and be able to use that in my rating. In terms of it being only a 6 issue series, it means it's very short. So it's got that short story, short movie feel. It's trying to do a lot all at once to grab you and also keep you. Now, that being said, I want to go ahead and go through a few notes I read just on the first notes I read. Pardon me, notes I wrote on just the first issue. That way, you guys really get my very first thoughts just on that first issue. And if I were rating this just on the first issue alone, that first issue for me would get a 4.5 out of 10. I know, it sounds super low, but hear me out. This issue is only about 20-ish pages long, maybe between 20 and 25. So there isn't a lot of time to grab your viewer, grab your reader, and really establish why we should keep going with this series, right? In this series, there's a lot of time jumps. As I said before, it takes place in their present, so 1950s in the South. But it also goes back to World War II, and it goes right back to right before World War II. And then it goes back to 10 years before what they call the variants. And then it goes to 6 months before the variants. So there's a lot of time jumping happening, even right in that first issue. And don't get me wrong, I have no problem with time jumps or going back in the past. I'm a big fan of time loop horror movies. But if you're trying to do it in the first issue, there's really nothing then to grab me. I'm trying to keep track of all these storylines and all these plot lines. And in all honesty, I probably couldn't have told you what main character's first name was until the second issue. So if it were up to me, I probably would not have gone beyond 1 issue or 2 issues. But that being said, I am glad I stuck with it for all 6 issues, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Again, for me, that very first issue, it was a 4.5 out of 10. And really, that is just because there was no grab, gotcha moment. It was trying to do too many plot lines all at once, and I really wasn't sure where it was going with that. As the story continues on as a whole, though, it does start to slightly get better. Unfortunately, the idea with too many plot lines and too many time jumps is going to continue throughout the 6 issues. For example, you need to know about this character's history in World War II. You need to know what he's going through, what he went through, all of that. That is such a major plot line. I've got no problem with that. But then in another issue, they do this random little meet cute with his wife, which, as adorable as meet cutes are, not really needed or necessary. We've already met his family, we've met his kid, we've met them as they are now in the 50s. And it established a really nice familial point, a really nice relationship. You felt for him. I didn't need to then go back to right before World War II and then meeting. It just was an unnecessary plot point for something that is so short of a story. That being said, it is very cute. I do love the characters that they came up with. They did make you feel for them right away, and I really appreciate that. Again, since you have such a short amount of time to get me, I want to be able to fall in love with your characters and be very invested in what's going to happen to them. My other problem with this series is it takes a long time for us to get to what is the comic book superpower variance type of thing that's happened. We don't really see that until issue 3 or 4, and really don't even get a grasp of it until 5 and 6. that is very late in a short run story. So for right there, you're just thinking like, well, I'm just reading a historical comic. There's really not going to be anything supernatural or sci-fi or anything. But there is, and I wanted to know more about that. I would have actually liked them to drop one of those other plot points or timelines that just was unnecessary and tell me more about what the heck is this variance? What was done to him? How he got these powers? What are these powers? There's really no true explanation for the amount of powers that he can do. I even left the sixth issue wondering, is he invincible? Is he immortal? Is he, are we doing like a Wolverine healing factor thing here, or is it just telekinetic? Is it super strength? Is it something more? A lot of unanswered questions that go into this. Now, it might sound like I'm bragging on this, but I do have to say, though, there is so much more potential in this series. I don't think the series is over in true comic book form. It ends with the end, question mark. And I'm okay with that. If this series continues, they did leave a lot open to introduce other characters that went through this sort of post World War II experimental phase that caused whatever this variance is, that caused whatever these superpowers are. Which means that there's other people like our hero, Avery, also known as Double A, out there with these mysterious powers and no way of knowing how to control them and no way of knowing like what to do with them. So to me, that's very interesting. They leave it open for so many more other stories and a continuation of Avery's story there. I don't want to give away too many plot points because I do want people to go out and read this and to experience it firsthand for yourself. If Latoya Morgan does decide to keep going and even make other offshoots of this series, I don't want to like spoil anything there, but I would definitely give those a read. And I would be happy to see that go on. For me, the best issue in this whole entire series is the last one. We're starting to get answers. We're starting to see more of these powers. We're starting to see the sacrifices that our hero has to make now in order to keep his family safe in this post World War II Alabama 1950s world. And him coming to acceptance. It is that idea of Harvey Dent Two-Face. I'm going to quote this wrong, but you live long enough to see yourself become the villain type of quote there. That's sort of the idea that he's going through. That is kind of that internal struggle. Well, I now have these powers. I didn't ask for them. And I can either use them to go ahead and wreak revenge on every person that's ever done me wrong, or I can use them for the time that I have them and go ahead and do good. And it's like, what do you do? It's a very personal and inner struggle, and there's no real answer. Avery does give you one, but again, I won't give you any of those potential spoilers there. So to me, that one culminated and really made it worth that read. So I am happy that I did stick the whole 6 issues. Again, I do hate to say that if I wasn't reviewing this, I probably would have stopped at issue 2 because I didn't really start getting grabbed to like issue 4 or 5. I do think that there needed to be more of a gotcha moment earlier on that made it worth my while to read it. Because although I did get my answers, although I did get a little bit more bang for my buck at the end, it still wasn't as much as I had hoped for. And that's just coming from a very brief read. I reread it twice. I tried to make sure I wasn't missing anything. But that was my idea of the whole entire storyline. Now, illustrations, they're wonderful in this. There's a very noir-esque feel to a lot of the illustrations that are done. And in true comic book form, when we go back to the World War II era, they're very muted in like grays and neutral colors and dark colors, symbolizing that really dark time in his life, this horrible event, these horrible things that are happening to him, and the fact that they're in the past. When you see him with his family in what is his present, it's bubbly, it's bright, bright colors, lots of yellows, lots of bright blues. The sun is shining, and that, of course, symbolizes how happy he is right then and there. And then we go to what happens when he gets his powers and has to go and protect his family. We get kind of a mixture of both. There's still a lot of lightness in there, Still a lot of lightness in the powers and in the person, but it's now taken on a much darker tone. And I love that. I love the noir feel. I love the hard lines. Sort of reminds me or makes me think that like Humphrey Bogart could be in the background and just chilling, and it would totally make sense. So I really do love the illustrative work in here. Um, yeah, so that right there is kind of my synopsis slash review slash thoughts of the 6 issues of Dark Blood by Latoya Morgan. Now, I know I said that I would give the first issue a 4.5 out of 10, but for the series as a whole, because I stuck on and because I really liked how it ended and left it open for even more in the future, I'm bumping up my total rating to a 7 out of 10. At least a couple of those points are definitely due to the illustrations and due to the artistic style. And then some of that is just for, okay, you gave me more than what I was asking for. I just wish you had done it earlier. So that's it. That is my review of Dark Blood, all 6 issues. Again, this was written in 2021 and ended in January of 2022. No word on if there's going to be more issues, but they did leave that little question mark at the end for us, and I really enjoyed it. I would love to hear anybody else's thoughts, feelings, comments, things that I might have missed, any little nuances that you noticed that I didn't. Please leave them in the comments because I would really, really love to read them and see what your thoughts were. But for that, this has been another episode of Boom Thursdays. I'm Kristen, aka Vampy, and I hope I'll be able to see you in the next issue.